Good evening from New York. I'm Ari Melber in for Chris Hayes. We have breaking news on Russia tonight. We also have a report on the spectacular failure of the president's health care push, and Senator Bernie Sanders will be here on that. Our top breaking story, though, there was another Putin-Trump meeting, and the president of the United States attended it all by himself. The White House did not disclose this meeting when it occurred, a breach of diplomatic practice, as we'll explain, and the meeting looks even more odd because the two leaders had already met, quite famously, for 2 hours at the G20 summit in Germany. The Washington Post breaking this rather explosive story this evening, noting this second meeting, unreported at the time, took place at a dinner for G20 leaders, a senior administration official confirming that. And halfway through the meal, Trump left his own seat to occupy a chair next to Putin. Continuing in the article, quote, Trump was alone and Putin was attended only by his official interpreter. The New York Times also reporting on this today, saying, quote, the intimate dinner conversation, of which there's no official U.S. government record, is the latest to raise eyebrows. Foreign leaders who witnessed it later commented privately on the oddity of an American president flaunting such a close rapport with his Russian counterpart. Now, we can tell you a formal readout would be difficult to write because while Putin had that staffer with him, Donald Trump attended alone. That means President Trump was entirely reliant on Putin's staff translator in the meeting and that he had no backup or expertise present to represent America's interests. It's hard to imagine Donald Trump, who prides himself on negotiation, showing up alone, say, and blindly relying on only a competitor's lawyer at a key business meeting. If the White House has a good reason for why he would do that with a foreign adversary, they have not yet offered it tonight, and they have been asked. Now, this story first broke into the open after something else interesting happened. A foreign affairs expert you may have seen on TV, Ian Bremmer, was raising this. He said that basically there was, quote, a meeting that no one's ever heard of, end quote, and this was in a discussion on Charlie Rose.
Then he has a meeting with a lot of people not in it, only Tillerson, the translators, Lavrov, the foreign minister, right, Russian foreign minister, and Putin, last over 2 hours, don't have a clear readout on exactly what was said from either side. Then on top of that, you have an hour that evening that no one's even heard of.
That no one's even heard of until now. Joining me is White House correspondent for the New York Times, Julie Hirschfield Davis, who reported this story out for the Times. How did we learn about this?
Well, Ian Bremmer is one of the ways, and also there were a lot of foreign leaders in that room who witnessed this exchange and who have privately commented on it, and, you know, that tends to leak out, and it was witnessed by a lot of people, and then after really hours in which I, pressed the White House for answers on this, we finally got some confirmation from senior White House officials who did acknowledge that, in fact, the meeting took place, that it pretty much unfolded the way it's been described by people who were in the room, and that, they're basically describing this as a routine thing. This was a leaders and their spouses event, a dinner.
But it's not routine.
It's nothing unusual. But it's not routine for one leader to approach another leader and have an hour-long conversation, something this significant, particularly after they had just met for the first time formally on the sidelines of this summit, and to have no other American official, and not even an American translator, present for this meeting. It was very unusual, and all of the other leaders around that table recognized that, even if President Trump didn't.
In your reporting, have you seen a high-level meeting like this where a U.S. president would enter it alone when a foreign leader had his own staff?
I've never seen anything like this. I mean, it's not unusual necessarily for an American president to decide that one of these private dinners is the place where he wants to buttonhole another leader on an important issue. But when that's the case, he prepares for that meeting. He'll take the translator that speaks that language. We now know from the White House that President Trump had taken a translator who spoke Japanese to this dinner. So he clearly, if he planned this encounter with President Putin, he didn't tell any of his staff, or if he did, they did him a disservice by not sending with him somebody who spoke the language, who could be in on that conversation, and at the very least, I mean, put aside a note taker. If you're going to have an hour-long conversation with another leader, particularly in a sensitive context like this one,
and Julie,
they know there are questions about
these
this
two men here were meeting for the first time in this high-profile environment amidst the ongoing questions about whether on the Trump side there was cooperation in illicit criminal activity for what the U.S. intelligence agencies say was a international criminal conspiracy to meddle in the election. We know that came up in the 2 hours. Do we have any idea whether any of that came back up in this extra hour?
There's no way of knowing. I mean, the Kremlin may know. The Kremlin does know. The translator obviously overheard whatever the conversation was and interpreted both sides of it. There is no official U.S. account. There can't be because there wasn't another official present. It's possible the president read it out to one of his top officials. Maybe he talked to Rex Tillerson about it. Maybe he talked to General McMaster, who was on the trip. But we certainly haven't heard any of that from senior officials at the White House. They're characterizing this as a brief, private conversation, and they're not going to talk about what was said because it was a private conversation, but also because they have no real way of reading something like that out. And that's the problem here. They knew going into this meeting, the formal meeting with President Putin, that all of the atmospherics surrounding the investigations about possible collusion were going to make it very difficult for them to come out of that meeting with anything other than a public relations nightmare, and this just makes it a little bit
worse.
worse.
Last question, did they admit to you, the staff, that they just don't know for the reasons you state?
Yeah, they do. I mean, they say there's no way of knowing what was discussed because we weren't there.
Which is not good. Julie Hirschfield Davis taking a break from your reporting to tell us about it. We appreciate it.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.